Let's be clear. Gary Lineker was never the problem. The BBC's treatment of him, culminating in his forced departure after 3 decades, has exposed a deeper institutional malaise. It's not about emojis or Gaza or a football presenter with a political conscience. It's about the absurd contortions of a national broadcaster still pretending that impartiality is a neutral, objective state and not a contested and increasingly outdated ideal. Lineker's move to ITV fronting The Box, a new prime-time entertainment show which I believe has nothing to do with cricket, represents more than a career shift. It's a symbolic turning point. Here is the BBC's most famous presenter poached by a commercial rival who has no qualms about his opinions, his politics or his tweets. And while ITV sees a star and potential ratings juggernaut, the BBC saw only reputational risk and regulatory headaches, and that should tell us something. We should examine the key issue, the BBC's ever-tightening grip on its presenters' conduct beyond the studio. Gary Lineker's offence was to share a pro-Palestinian video which admittedly and unfortunately included a rat emoji, long a symbol with anti-Semitic connotations. He apologised, but even then it was not enough. According to Lineker himself, he was told bluntly, quit or be quitted. Why? Because the BBC has built its modern editorial policy on a myth that it is possible or even desirable for a public-facing personality to be entirely politically neutral. Not just while on air, at all times, online, in interviews, in podcast appearances, even in their personal lives. This is a fantasy, and it's coercion and control which is beyond the norm. No one is politically neutral, not Fiona Bruce, not Andrew Neil, not Nick Robinson, not Andrew Marr, not Gary Lineker, and we shouldn't expect them to be. Political views are part of a thinking person's intellectual and moral life, and democracy needs honest disagreement, not robotic neutrality. Indeed, in many ways, BBC News and LBC have been more transparent. We know their biases, we know the editorial stance, and although many of us may recoil at the content, at least the pretense is gone. Compare that with the BBC's contorted efforts to present its journalists as impartial saints while holding them to impossible standards that curiously never apply to its corporate partners or its board appointments. Lineker's case reveals the hypocrisy. He was punished not for being wrong, but for being open. The problem, therefore, is not Lineker's social conscience. The problem is the BBC's fear of the social conscience ever being seen. So let's not forget, Lineker had already been through this once before. In 2023, he was briefly suspended for comparing the government's immigration rhetoric to that of 1930s Germany. Outrage followed. He was right, of course. Not from the public, who largely supported him, but from political allies of the very government in question. The BBC caved under pressure and reinstated him, but the precedent was set. Opinions are a threat. The problem is not that Lineker won't shut up. The problem is that the BBC, paralysed by political pressure and obsessed with presenting an illusion of balance, wants its public figures muzzled. Yet paradoxically, it tolerates far more partisan voices on radio phone-ins, in the guest chairs, and increasingly among senior executives. So what now? ITV has taken a gamble. The Box, nothing to do with cricket, may well succeed, not because Lineker is beloved by all, he isn't, but because he's compelling. He presents something alive, unpredictable, human, and relaxed, the very thing the BBC is now trying to snuff out in favour of the algorithmically approved, focus-grouped, lowest-risk personality. It might as well follow Russian television and replace its newscasters and its reporters with AI-generated figures. Could he front ITV's World Cup coverage? Possibly. Should he? That's up to him, but Lineker is the brand. Match of the Day is diminished without him. The BBC sports identity, built on his affability, clarity, and occasionally sharp political spine, is weakened. What would be better is if the BBC simply grew up. Acknowledge that presenters have opinions, let them speak, encourage transparency rather than forced neutrality, take responsibility for output, yes, stop demanding a priestly vow of silence from those who work for you. The BBC was never meant to be a monastery. Impartiality is not the same as honesty. Impartiality is a structural goal, not a human condition. And what we want is good journalism, clear distinctions between reporting and comment, and robust editorial oversight. What we don't need is the fiction that Lineker or anyone else is incapable of bias. We all are. We all are. The task is to manage bias, not pretend it doesn't exist. Gary Lineker's departure from the BBC is a self-inflicted wound by an institution terrified of its own reflection. The future belongs to broadcasters who are honest about their views, not those who force their stars to pretend they don't have any. And if the box succeeds, as it might well do, it will be because Gary Lineker, opinions and all, remains exactly what the BBC forgot he was, a national broadcaster.